Hi, welcome to a Roboflow training movie. In this training movie, I'm going to show you and explain what is new in release 11.0.1. In Cumulus 11, there was nothing changed for Roboflow, so we're going from version 10.2.5 to version 11.0.1. First of all, in Roboflow, you can always find out what version you are running by going to the logs and clicking on version info. There are two sections. One section is what we call the WAP, or the web application. The web application is this web interface, the part of Roboflow inside the server console. And as you can see, this release does not have anything new in it, so we can skip that. On the other hand, there is here in this part, there is a couple of new things in regards to the functionalities added in the backend, and the functionalities added in the backend, you can find them listed here. So here you can always find a list of things newly added or modified things. So if you're not certain if a certain version has a certain functionality, you can always come here and have a look. So here, this was 10.2 release containing these functionalities, and there is a movie, training movie explaining the functionalities or what's new in that particular version. In this new version, there are a couple of new things that can be very useful. I'm just going to go over the list and explain them to them. There are 7 training movies available. This one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and that one. That explain the individual functionalities of what is new in each section. You can find them on YouTube. Just look for Canto Roboflow and sort by date, and you will find the most recent ones. They are all called Canto Roboflow 11 and then with whatever is there. So if you want to find them, it's easy enough to go here and to say I want Canto Roboflow, and then you could say 11 for instance, and that should bring you to all these new newly uploaded functions. It's called 11 because these functionalities did not exist in previous versions, so that's why they're marked with 11. So let's have a quick look. I'm not going to go into the details of the other workflows, so I'll just be referring to them for those things that are in those particular sections. You can use also a shortcut to find these workflows. You can see here in the screenshot they're called Roboflow-230 or -233. So you should be able to search here for Robo-233 for instance, and that should bring you right to this one about file size and UID, or well, actually that is strange that it is splitting that up. It should not. Maybe if we put it in between quotes, and there it finds this particular one, and let's check, and it finds it because, as you can see here, Roboflow 233, and it's about file size and
explain some new placeholders or inlines in.
So complicated, a movie in a movie. So going back to here, show log, version info, let's quickly go over what is new and what is not documented. You know that there is an action write text to log, and it's very useful to add entries to your log. But in some cases, it is useful to have these instructions in there for development reasons. You're writing a workflow and you need to have more detailed information about what it is doing. Now, that's all very useful, but once the workflow is finished, then it is kind of annoying that it maybe outputs too much. You could play around with this setting of enabling debug logging or not enabling debug logging, but that is a very extensive log. It's a log that gives you a huge amount of information that is good for debugging for me or for Canto support, but not especially for you to use. Now, what you can do is in these instructions, you can prefix them with this. If you prefix them with debug, and if you create a little variable, you do a store text wherever you like, just before that write instruction. You could even put it in the global parameters if you want. But if you want, you can add a little parameter called just exactly like you're doing that prefix debug, and you say true. Then if you put it to true, it will output it. But if you put it to nothing, it will also output it. But if you put it to false, then it will not output that line. So when you're developing, you just add this in the beginning of your script, and you add to any of your debug information logs, you add this piece of text. While you're testing it and running the workflow, it will output this as long as this is not set to false. If this is set to true, if this is set to false, then it will no longer execute or output this information to your log. So that is an easy way of adding your own debug log information. That is different from this guy. So there is also here write text to debug log, but text to debug log that is only executed if you have enabled this parameter to debug. But that also means that you get all the other debug information, which could be very, very annoying to get 10 times as much information than you really require. Here you can actually output exactly what you want, and then you can see the steps where you are in your action script in your reported in your log. So that is a new feature. Oh, wrong button. A new feature that could be very useful. Then apply metadata template. So you can now apply a metadata template when you have a set record field text value. Instead of specifying the field name, you can simply specify template and it will execute that. It only works on native fields, so on text fields, date fields, integer fields, but not on vocabulary fields or not on very complex type of fields. It works on simple type fields. Next thing which has the training movie is the catalog loop. In a hot folder, in a hot collection, sorry, when you specify multiple catalogs separated by 2 semicolons, it will loop over those catalogs. And this is a standard feature, has been there for years. But you were not able to do this in the Cumulus, in the latest Roboflow versions for the hot folder. So this has been added. So if you separate in the specifying the hot folder multiple hot folders separated by semicolons, it will execute those. But you have to check out that training movie if you want to have more details about that. Then the next thing is that there is a file size placeholder, which has always existed, but which has now a couple of new options. You can no longer just get the file size, but also ask for the CRC32 or the Adler 32 checksum or the MD5 checksum. And there are also two new placeholders called Java UUID and Cumulus. This too has a training movie, so check it out if you want more details. A bug fix is this one, set property collection property value. It was only working on shared collections, now it's also working on private collections, and so that is a bug fix. Then also a training movie, Roboflow 230, is that there are 3 new actions: update formula field for record, category and a table field, which means that you can fire from a Roboflow workflow the update of a formula field. This can be useful if formula fields are added after the catalog has been used for a while. Then you actually require an update of that field to be populated. So that's a useful feature which has a demo movie. Then this is an internal bug fix, so doesn't matter. For FTP, in the previous release, we introduced the possibility to specify a fingerprint or a host key in an SFTP connection. This was done by adding the fingerprint here to the server name or IP address of the server and separated by semicolon. However, this semicolon did not work if you were using the individual upload FTP or download FTP instructions, so we expanded the functionality so that it also accepts a pipe instruction as separator. So if you specify it here or in the upload instruction, it will then work properly in both cases. And so that is a new, an improved functionality. In subtables, you were not able to get a string list field value, the text field value, and so it was just returning you the the index. For categories, you were not able to ask for the path or the level. So for categories, you are now able to ask again, give me the path, and in the field name, you just specify path, P-A-T-H, and it will give you the full path separated by slashes of a certain category. Same for the level. It could be important for you to know if it's on level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can get the level returned, which is also very useful. Then there was a little fix for setting string values. When you're setting string values and you try to set an empty value, Cumulus requires you to set a null value and not an empty string. Otherwise, you might end up with strange results. Visually in the client, you don't see that the difference between a null value and a string value, but in reality, Cumulus, when you make a string empty in the client, it actually puts in a null value, and that's a big difference with an empty string. So it was streamlined here. File folder plugin, the copy move file action has been extended with 2 new actions, a rename file and a rename folder, with which you can directly rename a file or rename a folder, or even move a file and move a folder with the native rename or move from the operating system, and no longer doing a copy and then deleting it to simulate a move. And so that has a training movie of itself, and just check out for the training movie 237 and you will find a complete explanation of that. Same for applying permission templates. So there was already an action for applying permission templates. The problem is that you could not remove the permissions from a record. So now this action accepts null. You can type in null as value, and that tells Roboflow to remove all permissions assigned to that record. And so all individual things that might have been added to that record are removed. So that means that that particular record or category follows the normal permission rulings of a user or of a role or whatever the top level permissions are for that catalog. And as I said, just check out the training movie. There's another training movie for the fallback Cumulus asset handling set. When cataloging a file, a cataloging process can fail, and to make sure that that fail is captured correctly, the standard functionality is to add a failing file to a blacklist. You can find a training movie on blacklist. Just look for Canto Roboflow blacklist. This is this list of files that are no longer processed because they cause problems. Well, you can now add a new parameter called fallback Cumulus asset handling set, and if you specify that one, it will try again with that second Cumulus asset handling set. Imagine that you're using an asset handling set which has like an InDesign filter enabled, or has an InDesign asset store enabled, and for some reason it fails. Unsupported format, the plugin was not correctly used, or the file is corrupt, or just a bug in Cumulus. The cataloging fails. Well, in the standard functionality, Cumulus Roboflow will just add that file to the blacklist, and it will no longer process it. It will send an email. Now, if you specify this one, you can have a second asset handling set where maybe those filters or asset stores are disabled. That way the file still gets cataloged, but of course not with the full features of the filters and the assets stores. And it also still sends out an email to the administrator reporting the problem, but at least you have a record in your catalog so the users can access your file. So that's a new functionality, and there's a training movie about that as well. Then there's a technical change, which I will not elaborate on. There is an internal, of course, you have internally in Cumulus the possibility to have binary fields. Well, there was no possibility to read or write those properly. It was failing. So now there's a functionality built in that you can read it, and it returns you the base 64 text version of that binary value. And in the other way around, you can store a base 64 value in those fields. And so that's a fix. That's pretty internally and not often used, but a fix anyway. Then finally, there's a big improvement on the call external application. There is a very elaborate training movie on that, just look it up. But basically it boils down to the fact that you can get an exit code back from an application that you're calling, which was not the case in the past. So it was pretty hard to check whether the calling instruction was successful. If you prefix it with exit colon, not semicolon, colon, then you will see a big difference that in the behavior. There was also a big improvement in the speed. By default, calling an external application, you could easily lose 10 to 20 seconds in the process because it was waiting for the result. Now by introducing the use of this exit code, it gives us the opportunity to react much more quickly. And so you will see a big improvement in there. Please check out the training movie. It will give you a detailed overview of what has been improved. So this was an overview of the changes for the release 11.0.1, and you can find 7 individual training movies for each of the changes on YouTube. As always, just search for Canto Roboflow, and then you will find all the training movies that might be interesting for you. There's at this point, I think, already more than 100 of them available. And so there is also on the Canto community a list that explains what these workflows do. You can have a kind of Excel sheet that gives a short description of what each workflow does and uses. Not every workflow is in that particular list, so you can always subscribe here to this channel, to my Roboflow channel, and then that could help you getting notified for any movies that I post. On average, I do 1 or 2 a month. Today I did 8. So thank you for joining this little overview movie for what's new in Cumulus 11. Bye.